There's a scene from the movie American Pie. I'm dating myself. The show choir singing, "How sweet it is to be loved by you."
Everywhere I went, seems I've been there before.
Marvin Gaye's original is haunting and gritty.
Everything was just a bore. All the things I did, seems I've done them before.
And James Taylor's cover is organic and subtle.
Everything I was into was just a bore. Everywhere, that seems like I've been there before now. But you bright enough for me all of my days.
But the show choir is really academicking it up. They seem like they've practiced too much. Like somebody in a classroom showed them the proper way to sing and took away all their grit and soul.
But you brighten up for me all of my days with a love so sweet.
One imagines if they'd just been left to their own devices, maybe they would have sounded more raw and soulful. Imagine taking a young Bob Dylan and showing him the right way to sing.
Once upon a time, you dressed so fine, through the bumps of dime in your prime. Then you...
Or a young Robert Johnson.
I went to the crossroads, fell down on my knees.
And some people think the same thing is true on drums. When we think of our favorite players, whether it be classic drummers like Clyde Stubblefield, Ginger Baker, Mitch Mitchell, and Bill Ward, or modern players like Nate Smith, Yusuf Days, Chris Dave, Brian Blade, etc., we appreciate them for their human feel, their grit, their soul. It's arguably even easier to see with guitar players. Imagine if John Mayer played with a completely clean tone in metronomic time. Or B.B. King. Or Eric Clapton. Or Jimi Hendrix. Or yes, Robert Johnson. Pretty unsoulful, right? And comments I get all the time on videos underscore this. Like this one. Not one culture ever uses metronomes. He's idiocy. Did Africans or Indians use metronomes? Lol. Did Ringo do that? He's worth $300 million. Lol. Of course, this is a bit of what they call nutpicking. There are better faith versions of this argument. Like an email I got from a friend the other week, suggesting that by teaching students to play cleaner and have more control, I was engineering the soul out of them. And hopefully all the examples I've given up to this point, the show choir, Mayer Hendrix, the grit in soulful drummers, etc., illustrates that I see where these people are coming from. And indeed, I think there is a shade of truth in this. It probably is possible to take somebody with a very innate musical feel and train that out of them. Teach them to be more conventional and homogeneous. And it's definitely possible that at the very least, along the way to learning to be great, people will go through periods where they're thinking more, playing less spontaneously, and less trusting of themselves. And the reason I'm going to all this effort to present this argument in its best light is that I'm going to basically spend the rest of this video taking it down. Sorry, novice sloppiness, in the vast majority of cases, is not the same as soulful grit. In this video, I'll present a few different categories of evidence. I'll show you some analogies like language. We'll hear from some of these soulful players about their actual backgrounds and education. And trust me, most weren't worried more schooling was going to destroy their soul. Then we'll make the distinction between good practice and instruction, i.e. Bob Dylan putting in a lot of hours becoming a better version of himself, and bad. And finally, we'll return to the show choir example and examine what it gets wrong. Oh, I'm Nate, and people call me the 80/20 drummer. And as a drum coach, I'm 100% an interested party, an unreliable narrator. But I hope you'll take or leave my ideas for their merit, not just because I'm somebody who obviously believes good instruction can help drummers be the best versions of themselves and play more soulfully and authentically. Anyway, we'll talk about it. Does drum learning take away the soul? Stay tuned. Chapter 1. What is grit? I love the American Pie example because grit is the difference between the way Marvin Gaye sounds
Everything was just a bore.
and well, the show choir.
Everywhere I went, seems I've been there before.
But a couple of other examples. Here's Nate Smith. And here I am playing not soulfully. Here's Steve Gadd. And me again. There are gradations of grit. When I put out a question on Instagram about it, I mentioned Nesh Waits and Marcus Gilmore because both intentionally wabi-sabi their playing. But as the responses reminded me, most good players have some grit, some human push-pull, some sauce. But when you hear a blues guitar, you recognize it. The distortion, the blending of tone, the playing ahead or behind the beat. The musical choice to play not the most technically impressive thing, but the most resonant. For drums, check out Marcus Gilmore playing with Gilad Hexelman and Mark Turner. Stretching the time, playing the big beat. Playing gesturally instead of in strict subdivisions. Analog. And I believe drumming can also be soulful and gritty, even if it's in time. We'll get into this more, but Brian Blade's playing on Joshua Redman's Elastic album is in many places clean, which is to say not mishitting the drums or playing out of time. But it has a human quality. Some drummers leave you wondering, how did they do that? But with Blade, the simplicity is part of the point. But for our purposes today, let's define grit by putting soul ahead of virtuosity, we'll say. And a lot of times that means some intentional imperfections, like virtuosic playing. Playing with grit. And I'm intentionally using the same player for both examples, for reasons I'll explain. So back to the central question of this video. Does formal instruction kill this type of grit? Is it true that this either does or doesn't arise from birth, and trying to educate or workshop it means its destruction? Well, let's look at the other side. Chapter 2. What is sloppiness? What does real novice sloppiness look like? First, here are some positive clips of people just starting the drums. I tried to pick a few that had a good level of energy and abandon. Now let me demonstrate a few things I tend to see in beginners, and I know them well because they're all things I used to do, which is why I'm going to demonstrate them. First, muddled voicing. Here I am playing with muddled and inconsistent volume between my kick, snare, and hats. Next, rushing and dragging in non-danceable places. Again, I'll do my best to demonstrate. When we're first starting out, we'll very often rush offbeats and hemiolas, drag downbeats, and in general, let the groove sag. Nate Smith, by contrast, well, let's leave that for later. Third novice thing, being repetitive. One hallmark of true beginner sloppiness is repetition of the same ideas. Here I'm playing as if I'm boxed in, with only 1 to 2 ideas. Fourth novice tendency, add extra beats. We've all likely heard this one, but going to play a fill or something and unintentionally just playing a bar 5. Final novice tendency, miss opportunities in the music. If there's a spot to take the reins, supply an assertive groove, highlight a big dynamic contrast, otherwise draw a contrast between sections, let alone sculpt a song by changes in vibe and texture, many of those things will go out the window if you start a jam session with the house band, then invite some novices to sit in. And you might be thinking, yeah, that's true for some novices, but others are just born with it. And if you try to school them, you'll kill their soul. True, there are some exceptions to this rule. And we'll get to those. But even if that's the case, what are we supposed to tell the other 95%? Interlude. Mediocre drummers can learn to become good drummers. Here, some viewers might be thinking, yeah, you're either born with it or you're not. So just play naturally with no formal instruction and you'll either be soulful or you won't. Which is why, to prove my point, I have to prove that some soulful drummers were made, not born. Complete video on the nature-nurture debate here. But recently, both Sean Crowder of Sungazer and the estimable Stipario Siberiano released videos of their progress. And if you listen to them now, they both sound soulful in their own way. Some of you will debate me on Siberiano, but Google his clips with his band. But by their own recounting, rewind 20 years and they both sounded pretty average. Anecdotally, I've seen this too. People I went to college with who sounded okay, I've heard years later with bands and they're nasty. Also, people I've watched grow up on Instagram. People who were okay in their teens and now they're touring with big bands. You may insist that this isn't real, in which case, at least check my video here. But eventually, we'll have to agree to disagree. For everybody else, it's here that we arrive at the crux of this video. If novice sloppiness isn't soul, then what's the difference? Let's use an analogy first. As much as this gets trotted out, language is a good one. People around the world want to learn English slang because it's just very cool. One of my favorite shows a few years ago was The Wire, because of the wit and humor of the dialogue, and, well, how cool they sounded.
Man, who invented these? Shit, you richer than a motherfucker.
Now that I'm studying Spanish, it's similar. When I hear people speak slang or talk informally, it just sounds cool.
Sos un héroe, un ídolo, cuando no las consigues sos un boludo bárbaro, pero bueno.
Language is soulful, especially slang. Now, would anybody say, if I want to speak slang Spanish, I should just feel it, like speaking in tongues? And if I want to sound cool like Bad Bunny, taking actual Spanish lessons is making that harder? If somebody didn't know a word of English, would we say he should just feel it? To speak like Ava on a Stringer Bell, and English lessons would take away his soul?
Like, yo, that white boy ain't gonna jump over that counter and come chase after me.
Of course not. The truth is, basic language aptitude is a different thing than how formal your speech is. You have to know the rules to bend them. But let's take this to the drums. Let's look at one of my favorite modern soulful drummers, Adam Deitch. Adam is nasty in a good way, which is to say he plays with grit. But check this clip. It's loose, but loose in a way that makes you want to dance.
It's fine. Think people doing fine. Hanging out, looking at each other.
Remember my novice clips? Rushing off beats, dragging down beats. The beat sagging, leaking energy like a deflated basketball. Are any of these things danceable? Check Adam's kick drum, steady like a heartbeat. When it changes volume, it does because he wants it to. Compare that to my example. Randomly lower volume in some places for no musical reason. All over the map in terms of whether it's ahead or behind the beat. Brian Blade playing something simple, just boom check. Everything right in the center of the pocket. All the instruments, a musical relative volume. Whenever there's looseness, it makes it more danceable, not less. Bonham, Bill Ward. My favorite loose rock examples. Bonham's Beat. Was he wavering with the kick drum volume? Were some of his backbeats just randomly softer because he didn't have the coordination to keep track? No. I mean, this kind of isn't even controversial when you confront it head on, right? It's kind of mic drop. But let's give the devil his due. Is there a world where some kinds of instruction can rob somebody of their rawness and grit? Absolutely. Part whatever. What if Bob Dylan had had show choir?
Cardboard filled windows.
When we say Bob Dylan was schooled, that's not to say either that just any schooling would have done, nor even to say he necessarily had formal education. It might have been that in Dylan's day, the best education was simply listening to and imitating the masters he looked up to.
Well, I got up and I walked around.
It might be he was his own teacher.
Lonesome town, just a wondering.
But it's also true that we don't have to look very deep beneath the surface to find drummers who seem like soulful, gritty, organic, emotional players who sing the praises of their formal music education. Max Roach, for instance, studied classical percussion at Manhattan School of Music from 1950 to 1953. Others, like Kenny Clark, studied multiple instruments and music theory. Modern players like Dana Hawkins and Mason Guidry also credit formal study for helping them find their voices. But there is a bad version of this. Remember the gleeful novice? I'm fond of finding videos of people chronicling their drum journeys, where day one they're full of life and energy, and by year two, they're playing on a practice pad and overthinking everything. And sure, sometimes you have to go through a rebuilding phase, where you overthink everything before you can reemerge with equal spontaneity and a better set of tools. But bad education can also ruin a player, in at least two ways. First, by sapping their motivation. I almost quit the drums early on because an early teacher required me to practice on the practice pad for 1 to 2 years before I'd ever get to touch the kit. There had to be a better way than that. And I think better teachers know how to keep things fun, but also still instill the fundamentals. Second, by homogenizing away their personal quirks. There's a big difference between learning the basic building blocks and one-size-fits-all learning. Like listening to smooth out those non-danceable quirks in your time. Happy Drake. Learning basic stickings and dynamics, and how to move around the kit without accidentally rushing or dragging, and get the sound you intend. Happy Drake. This stuff is all like basic vocabulary and grammar. Missing opportunities for more advanced students to start making their own recipes with vocabulary building blocks? Cringe Drake. Telling a student something they thought of as wrong. For instance, playing ghost notes on a tom instead of a snare. Cringe Drake. Taking a danceable beat or musical personal looseness and forcing the student to iron it out. Cringe Drake. A lot of it comes down to recognizing the difference between basic fluency and style.
Man, who invented these?
Shit, you richer than a motherfucker.
If somebody from Slovenia wants to speak American slang, grammar and vocabulary fundamentals? Great. Correcting slang phrases to the King's English? Cringe.
Just some sad ass down at the basement of McDonald's.
So, does drum education rob your beats of soul? No, provided it's the right education for you. But also, we need to stop confusing a lack of fluency with soulful looseness.
Everything I did was
So what was going on with that show choir?
everywhere I went, seems I've been there before.
The same exact thing you see in high school music programs everywhere. And of course, I know this was a movie, but indulge me, because it was poking fun at something real.
I just wanna stop.
Let's imagine this harried, underpaid choir director who probably went to Berkeley and sang in an NSYNC cover band, faced with a crop of high schoolers with vastly different abilities, and he wants to help them feel the pleasure of singing, but he also wants to feel the pleasure of some of those competition plaques on his office wall. All county, whatever. So he's getting everybody up to a level of basic proficiency in as few hours as necessary. That means smoothing over the bumps. That means one size fits all. That means lowest common denominator for everybody, unless there's somebody who's already had lessons, or who's a natural, then you stick them out front for the solo. But in this case, no. But did even this fictitious high school show choir rob any of these singers of the grit and soul they might eventually have? Probably not, since the level is so low. Remember that crucible everyone has to go through where they're overthinking? Like Sean Crowder did not sound like Sean Crowder in high school band. But if any of them had, You get it. And that's how you get the gig! Anyway, hope you enjoyed this one. Leave a comment below, let me know what your opinion is. Dudes, it's been real, always enjoy these. See you again real soon in another Lesson of the Week.